At her son's lavish Brooklyn wedding, Emily Turner, a quiet widowed engineer, becomes the evening's joke whispered about as the plain mother with no fortune. Her new daughter-in-law, Jessica Calloway, laughs loudest, certain she's married into status, not substance. But when Jessica's father recognizes Emily across the ballroom, the investor who secretly bought and saved his collapsing company, the room freezes. The woman they mocked is not a burden, but the power behind their survival. From that instant, Emily drops 15 years of silence and plays the only game she ever masters: strategy. Beneath the glittering skyline of New York and the polite cruelty of America's upper class, she begins to dismantle a circle of entitlement built on lies and debt. It's not wealth she fights for, but dignity and a son caught between love and truth. This isn't just a tale of hidden money, it's a story of emotional warfare, legal maneuvers, and a woman reclaiming her voice in a world that only values noise. In the end, Emily Turner will prove what quiet power truly sounds like, that the greatest revenge is not ruin, but rising above it. Before we begin today's story, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Now let's get started. The evening light over Brooklyn Bridge Park fell in soft gold. Emily Turner stood near the ceremony site in a navy sheath dress. Simple cut. No embellishments. Her clutch was small and practical. Pearl earrings caught the sun once, then disappeared into shadow. She was 61, widowed 6 years now. Her husband had been a good man. Quiet. He left her memories in a modest insurance policy. That was all anyone needed to know. Today was her son's wedding. Dylan was 32. He worked in product marketing at a midtown tech firm. Bright. Kind. He looked like his father when he smiled. Emily had raised him alone by accident. She worked long hours as a systems engineer. Never complained. Never asked for help. He was marrying Jessica Calloway, 30 years old. Warm laugh. Sharp mind. Emily liked her. That was enough. The wedding site was beautiful. A string quartet played near the waterfront. White chairs lined up in neat rows. The Manhattan skyline rose behind them like a painting. Guests arrived in black tie attire, silk dresses, pressed tuxedos. The air smelled of roses and salt water. Emily took her seat in the third row. Not the first. She folded her hands in her lap and watched the guests arrive. The Calloways were old money, logistics and shipping. Robert Calloway owned half the freight terminals in New England. His wife Paula wore diamonds that caught every beam of light. Their world was large and confident. Emily had met them once before. A quiet dinner in Manhattan. Robert talked about shipping routes. Paula talked about charity galas. Emily listened and nodded. She asked no questions. The ceremony began. The quartet played Pachelbel. Jessica walked down the aisle in ivory lace. Her father held her arm. Robert looked proud. Dylan stood at the altar, shifting his weight slightly. When Jessica reached him, he smiled. Vows were exchanged. Dylan's voice was steady. Jessica's voice was soft. The guests applauded. The sun dipped lower. Pink and orange spread across the sky. Then came the reception. Tables were set near the water. White linens. Candles in glass jars. The quartet moved to a small stage. Waiters carried trays of champagne through the crowd. Emily stood at the edge. She held a glass of sparkling water. She didn't drink much anymore. She watched Dylan and Jessica move from table to table. They looked happy. That was all that mattered. Robert Calloway approached. Tall, silver hair, expensive suit. He extended his hand. Mrs. Turner. Emily shook it. His grip was firm. Mr. Calloway. Beautiful ceremony, he said. Yes, it was. He smiled. Then he paused. His eyes narrowed. He tilted his head and looked at her face, then at her pearls, then back at her face. Something shifted in his expression. Have we met before? Besides the dinner, I mean. Emily's pulse stayed steady. She had practiced this moment many times. I don't think so. Robert's smile faded. His eyes didn't leave hers. You look familiar. Very familiar. Emily said nothing. She took a sip of water. The glass was cool against her palm. Robert's face changed. His jaw tightened. His eyes went wide. He leaned in. His voice dropped to a whisper. Aren't you the silent investor who bought Calloway Freight? The question hung in the air between them. Emily felt its weight, but she didn't flinch. She met his eyes with a calm she had learned over decades of careful living. You must be mistaken. Her voice was even, polite, final. Robert stared at her. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. He looked like a man who had just been told something impossible. The laughter around them seemed to fade. A few guests turned their heads. One of the photographers lowered his camera. Jessica stood a few feet away. Her smile twitched. She had heard the question. Paula Calloway appeared at her husband's side. She glanced at Emily. She took in the pearls, the simple clutch, the navy dress. Her expression was clear. She saw middle class. She saw modest. She saw someone who didn't quite fit their world. Is everything all right? Paul asked. Robert didn't answer. He was still staring at Emily. Dylan noticed the tension. He stepped closer. His face showed concern. Mom, he said quietly, everything okay? Emily turned to her son. She gave him a small smile. The kind that said, don't worry. I'm fine. Everything's fine. Just tired. Dylan didn't look entirely convinced, but he nodded. Emily set her glass down on a nearby table. She picked up her clutch. She looked at Robert one last time. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Then she turned and walked toward the exit. Her steps were calm, measured. She didn't rush. She didn't look back. The string quartet played on. The candles flickered in their glass jars. The Manhattan skyline began to glow in the deepening twilight. Robert Calloway stood frozen in place. His face had gone pale. His hands were clenched at his sides. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost walk through his daughter's wedding. Jessica touched his arm. Dad, she whispered. He didn't answer her. Above them, a drone camera captured the scene from high overhead. The East River stretched out dark and wide. The lights of the city began to sparkle one by one. The wedding continued around them. Music and laughter filled the evening air. But something had shifted. Emily Turner disappeared into the soft Brooklyn night, and Robert Calloway knew, standing there in the fading light, that his carefully ordered world had just changed forever. The next morning arrived cold and gray. Emily's apartment in Yorkville was small, rent stabilized. She had lived there for 23 years. The walls were cream-colored. The furniture was practical. A faded couch, a wooden table by the window. Sunlight came through in thin strips when the weather was good. Today it didn't. Dylan stood in the living room. He paced from the window to the door, then back again. His hands were in his pockets. His jaw was tight. He had barely slept. Emily could see it in the way he moved. Restless. Worried. She sat at the table with a cup of tea. The steam rose in soft curls. She watched her son and said nothing. Mom, he said finally, we need to talk about last night. Emily took a sip of tea. It was Earl Grey. Simple. Familiar. There's nothing to talk about, she said. Dylan stopped pacing. He looked at her. His eyes were the same as his father's. Honest. Direct. It made lying to him harder. Mr. Calloway looked like he'd seen a ghost, Dylan said. What did he mean? That thing he said about the investor? Emily set her cup down gently. The porcelain made a soft clink against the saucer. He was mistaken, she said. People see what they want to see. Dylan opened his mouth to respond. Then his phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket. He looked at the screen. His expression shifted. It's Jessica, he said. Emily waited. Dylan read the message aloud. Lunch, family matters. He looked up. She wants to meet. Both of us. Emily felt something tighten in her chest. But her face stayed calm. When? She asked. Today. Non. She suggested a place near Central Park. Emily nodded slowly. She knew what this was. She had seen it before. In boardrooms. In negotiations. The polite invitation. The careful wording. The tactical urgency hidden beneath good manners. Tell her we'll be there, Emily said. Dylan looked uncertain, but he typed a reply and sent it. Emily stood. She carried her cup to the sink. She rinsed it carefully. She dried it with a towel. She moved with the same calm she always did. But inside, her mind was already working. Planning. Calculating. The restaurant was on the Upper East Side. White tablecloths. Crystal glasses. Fresh flowers on every table. The kind of place where menus had no prices. Where waiters moved like dancers. Where silence was respected. Emily and Dylan arrived 5 minutes early. Jessica was already there. She sat at a corner table near the window. Sunlight fell across the white linen. She wore a pale gray blazer. Her hair was pulled back. Her smile was polite, professional. She stood as they approached. She kissed Dylan on the cheek. She extended her hand to Emily. Mrs. Turner, she said. Thank you for coming. Emily shook her hand. Jessica's grip was firm. Practiced. They sat. A waiter appeared immediately. He set down water glasses. He asked about drinks. Jessica ordered for the table without asking. A bottle of Bordeaux. Vintage. Emily caught the year on the label. She did the math quickly. $900. At least. Dylan shifted in his seat. He looked uncomfortable. Emily reached across and touched his hand briefly. A small gesture. It said, "I'm here. It's okay." The wine arrived. The waiter poured 3 glasses. Jessica lifted hers. She smiled. "To family," she said. Emily lifted her glass but didn't drink. She set it back down. She folded her hands in her lap and waited. Jessica took a sip. She set her glass down carefully. Then she reached into her bag. She pulled out a tablet. She placed it on the table between them. "I studied at Wharton," Jessica said. "Finance and corporate strategy. I did my thesis on anonymous M&A structures, shell companies, silent partnerships. It's fascinating work, really." Emily said nothing. She watched Jessica's face. The smile was still there, but it had changed. It was sharper now, more focused. Jessica tapped the screen. An image appeared, a photograph, 3 years old based on the date stamp, a signing ceremony, a conference room, a long table, several people in business attire. One figure stood at the edge of the frame, navy suit, turned slightly away from the camera. The face was blurred, but the posture was clear. The height, the handbag. Emily recognized herself immediately. Jessica zoomed in on the figure. She tilted the tablet toward Dylan. "This was the Callaway Freight acquisition," Jessica said. "The deal that saved the company 3 years ago. The silent investor. No name, no press, just a signature and a wire transfer." Dylan leaned forward. He stared at the image. His face went pale. "Mom," he said quietly, "is that you?" Emily met his eyes. She saw the confusion there, the hurt. He wanted a simple answer, a simple truth, but she couldn't give him that. Not here. Not now. She needed to protect him, even if it meant he didn't understand. "Dylan," she said softly, "trust me." His jaw tightened, but he nodded. Jessica watched the exchange. Her expression didn't change. She tapped the screen again. More documents appeared. Financial records, transaction logs, shell company names. She had done her homework. Emily had to give her that. The research was thorough, precise, professional. "I'm not here to accuse anyone," Jessica said. "I'm here to propose a solution. A family solution." Emily finally spoke. Her voice was calm, even. "What kind of solution?" Jessica smiled. She folded her hands on the table. Her posture was perfect. Textbook negotiation stance. Emily recognized it because she had used it herself. Many times. "A family foundation," Jessica said. "Shared governance. Cross-generational transparency. We pool resources. We make decisions together. Everyone benefits. Everyone has a voice." The words were smooth, rehearsed. Jessica had practiced this. Probably in front of a mirror. Probably with her father's lawyers. Emily let the silence stretch. She watched Jessica's face, looking for cracks, for uncertainty. There were none. This wasn't curiosity. This wasn't love. This was strategy. Goal-seeking. Calculated. "You're talking about governance," Emily said finally. "I'm talking about love. They're not the same thing." Jessica's smile tightened. "Just slightly. Just for a second." "That's an unfair framing, Mrs. Turner," she said. "This is about family unity. About building something together." Emily picked up her napkin. She placed it on the table. She stood slowly. Dylan looked up at her, surprised. "Jessica," Emily said, "I raised my son alone. I worked 60-hour weeks. I paid for his college. I taught him what matters. And it's not governance. It's not transparency. It's loyalty. It's love. It's knowing when someone is looking at you as family or as a business opportunity." Jessica's face hardened. The polite mask slipped. Just for a moment. But Emily saw it. The calculation. The coldness beneath the charm. "You're making a mistake," Jessica said. Emily looked at her for a long moment. Then she looked at Dylan. "Let's go," she said. Dylan hesitated. He looked at Jessica, then at his mother. Then he stood. They walked out together. The restaurant was quiet behind them. The Bordeaux sat untouched on the table. The white tablecloth gleamed in the sunlight. Outside, the air was cold. Emily pulled her coat tighter. Dylan walked beside her, silent. His face was troubled. They reached the corner. Emily stopped. She turned to face him. "Dylan," she said, "I need you to trust me. Just for a little while longer. Can you do that?" He looked at her. His eyes were full of questions, but he nodded. "Okay, Mom," he said quietly. "I trust you." Emily touched his cheek. Just briefly. Then she turned and walked away. That evening, Emily sat alone in her apartment. The lights were off. The city glowed outside her window. She had a laptop open in front of her. Her fingers moved across the keyboard. Fast. Precise. If they wanted to dig, she would dig faster. deeper, cleaner. She pulled up files, old transactions, shell companies, layers upon layers of legal protection. She checked every link, every signature, every trail. And then she started making calls. The first was to her lawyer, a man in Boston who specialized in corporate structures. He answered on the second ring. "I need a full audit," Emily said. "Every holding, every transaction. I want it airtight." "How soon, Hinaman?" he asked. "Yesterday," she said. He didn't argue. He knew her well enough. The second call was to an investigator, a woman in New York who had worked for her before. Discreet, thorough, expensive. "I need background," Emily said. "Full workup. Family history, business connections, debts, everything." "On who?" the woman asked. "The Callaways," Emily said. There was a pause on the line. "That's a big family," the woman said. "I know," Emily said. "Start with Robert, then his wife, then the daughter. When do you need it?" "End of week," Emily said. "It'll cost you." "I don't care," Emily said. She hung up. She stared at the screen for a long moment. Her face was calm, but her eyes were hard. The game had begun, and Emily Turner didn't lose games. She closed the laptop. She stood. She walked to the window. The city stretched out below her. Millions of lights, millions of lives. She had built something from nothing. She had survived loss. She had protected her son. And she would protect him now, no matter what it took. Outside, the night was cold and clear. The stars were hidden behind the city glow. But somewhere up there, beyond the light and the noise, they were still burning. Emily stood at the window and watched the city. Her reflection stared back at her. Calm, steady, unafraid. If they wanted a war, she would give them one. But they would fight on her terms, not theirs. She turned away from the window. She picked up her phone. She sent one more message. To her lawyer. "Accelerate everything," she typed. "We move first." She hit send. Then she set the phone down. The game was on, and Emily Turner was 3 moves ahead. 3 days later, Emily sat at her kitchen table. Her laptop was open. The stack of papers sat beside it. The apartment was quiet. Outside, the afternoon light was fading. The radiator hissed softly in the corner. Her phone rang. The screen showed a Chicago number. James Sullivan, James Sullivan, her advisor for 12 years. A man who understood complex structures and careful planning. She answered on the second ring. "James," she said. "Emily." His voice was steady, professional, but she heard the tension beneath it. "We have a problem." Emily picked up her pen. She pulled a notepad closer. She had learned long ago to write everything down. Memory was not enough. Not in situations like this. "Tell me," she said. "A private investigator reached out to 3 of our shell managers," James said. "Different firms, different states. But the questions were the same. Beneficial ownership, transaction timing, fund-to-fund transfers." Emily's hand paused over the paper. Then she started writing. Her handwriting was small and precise. "Who hired them?" she asked. "We don't know yet," James said. "But the timing suggests the Callaways. The questions are too specific. Too targeted." Emily nodded to herself. She had expected this. Still, hearing it confirmed was different. "What else?" she asked. James paused. She could hear papers rustling on his end. "There's been informal contact with the SEC," he said. "Nothing official yet. Just feelers. Questions about 13D filing deadlines. Whether your ownership crossed thresholds. Whether disclosure was timely." Emily closed her eyes for a moment. Then she opened them. She kept writing. "Your structures are lawful," James continued. "Everything was done by the book. But you know how this works. Complexity can be spun. Optics matter. If this goes public, the story won't be about what's legal. It'll be about what looks suspicious." "I understand," Emily said. "There's more, Chum. Soon, Chamaswan." His voice dropped slightly. "If they push hard enough, if they get media involved, it won't just be about you. It'll be about Dylan, his career, his reputation. They'll call him a beneficiary. They'll say he got where he is because of your money. Even if it's not true." Emily's jaw tightened. She set down her pen. She stared at the wall. Her son had worked for everything he had. Every degree, every promotion, every success. He had earned it. He didn't even know about her investments, not the scale of them. "What do you recommend?" she asked. "2 options," James said. "First, you could settle quietly. Give them what they want. Some kind of family arrangement. Shared control. It would be expensive, but it would end this." "And the second option?" Emily asked. "Fight," James said simply. But if you fight, you need to move first. Control the narrative. Know their weaknesses before they use yours. Emily was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the light had turned gray. The city hummed with distant traffic. "Thank you, James," she said finally. "I'll call you tomorrow." She hung up. She sat in the quiet apartment. The radiator hissed. The clock on the wall ticked softly. Then she opened her laptop and started working. The investigator's report arrived 2 hours later. Encrypted email. 87 pages. Emily read every word. The Callaways were not what they appeared to be. Their mansion in Boston sat on a home equity line of credit, 78% of its value. The terms were interest only. The reset was coming in 6 months. When it did, the payment would triple. Maybe more. Robert's income after the sale was listed as consulting fees. But Emily recognized the names of the companies paying him. They were subsidiaries of Callaway Freight. The managers running them were people Emily had installed, people she trusted, people who reported ultimately to her. Robert was being paid by his own former company for advice no one asked for. It was a courtesy, a way to ease the transition, but it wouldn't last forever. Emily had already decided to end those contracts in the next quarter. Paula Callaway had credit cards with 6 different banks. The balances added up. Private school tuition for grandchildren, country club dues, charity gala tables that cost $20,000 each. She spent like someone who expected money to always be there. But it wasn't. Not anymore. And Jessica was the most interesting. She had opened 3 new lines of credit in the past 2 months. Personal loans, business development accounts, all with high limits, all untouched. She was building capacity, getting ready. For what? For a liquidity event. For a payout. For money she expected to receive. The report included financial projections. If the Callaways didn't get an injection of cash soon, they would start selling assets. The house, the vacation property in Maine, the art collection, all of it. Emily leaned back in her chair. She rubbed her eyes. She was tired, but her mind was clear. This wasn't about family unity. This wasn't about love or connection. This was about money, about survival. The Callaways were drowning in debt, and they thought Emily was the lifeboat. She stood. She walked to the window. The city stretched out below her. Lights were coming on. People were going home, making dinner, watching television, living simple, ordinary lives. Emily thought about those lives, about the viewers who might someday watch her story. People in their 60s and 70s, people who had worked hard, who had saved carefully, who worried about retirement, about healthcare, about dignity. She thought about long-term care insurance, about Medicare gaps, about the fear of losing your home because you got sick, because the system was complicated, because the rules changed. She understood those fears. She had lived them. When her husband died, the insurance barely covered the funeral. She had worked 3 extra years to pay off the mortgage. She had skipped vacations, skipped new clothes, skipped everything that wasn't essential. She had built her wealth carefully, quietly, and she had done it to protect Dylan, to give him choices, to make sure he never had to struggle the way she had. Now the Callaways wanted to take that. They wanted to turn her careful planning into something ugly, something suspicious. They wanted to paint her as someone who hid money, who broke rules, who built an empire on secrets. And worse, they wanted to drag Dylan into it, to make him look like someone who got ahead because of family connections, to destroy the career he had built with his own hands. Emily felt anger rise in her chest, but she pushed it down. Anger was useless. Anger made mistakes. She needed to think clearly. She returned to the table. She opened a fresh document. She started typing. A plan, step by step. First, she would talk to Dylan. She would tell him everything. Not just pieces, everything. He deserved that. He deserved to understand. Second, she would contact Robert directly. She would offer him a choice. Back off and keep the consulting income. Keep the dignity. Keep the illusion. Or push forward and lose everything. She would make it clear. She would make it simple. Third, she would prepare for media. She would hire a reputation firm. People who understood crisis management. Who knew how to shape stories. Who could protect Dylan if things went public. And fourth, she would test Jessica. She would give her one chance. One conversation. To prove whether this was about family or about money. To show her true motive in daylight. Emily typed for 2 hours. The plan grew longer, more detailed, more complete. She thought through every scenario, every response, every countermove. When she finished, it was dark outside. The city glowed with electric light. Her apartment was warm. The radiator still hissed. But Emily felt cold. She saved the document. She closed the laptop. She stood and walked to the kitchen. She made tea. Earl Grey again. She held the cup in both hands. The warmth seeped into her palms. She thought about her husband, about the life they had planned, about the simple apartment, the quiet evenings, the hope that their son would have a better life than they did. He would have been proud of Dylan. She knew that. Dylan was kind. He was honest. He worked hard. He treated people well. That was what mattered. Not money, not success, character. And that was what she was fighting for now. Not wealth, not power. Character. Dylan's character. His reputation. His right to be judged by his own work and nothing else. She finished her tea. She rinsed the cup. She placed it in the dish rack. Then she turned off the kitchen light. She walked to her bedroom. She lay down on the bed without undressing. She stared at the ceiling. The apartment was dark. Outside, the city never slept. Cars passed. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone laughed on the street below. Emily lay in the darkness and felt the weight of what was coming. She would have to fight. She would have to expose secrets. She would have to risk everything she had built. And she would have to do it alone. Dylan couldn't help. He didn't have the experience. He didn't have the hardness. He still believed in good intentions, in honesty, in fairness. She had raised him to believe those things, and she was glad she had. But they wouldn't help him now. This was her fight, her burden, her choice. She closed her eyes. She breathed slowly. In and out, she let the darkness settle around her. Tomorrow she would begin. She would call Dylan. She would call Robert. She would set everything in motion. But tonight she rested. She gathered her strength. She prepared for war. In the darkness of her small apartment, Emily Turner lay alone. The city hummed outside her window. The world turned. And somewhere across town, the Callaways slept in their mansion. They dreamed of money and solutions and easy fixes. They did not know what was coming. They did not know who they were dealing with. But they would learn. Soon enough, they would learn. Emily opened her eyes one more time. She looked at the ceiling, at the shadows, at the faint glow from the street below. She had spent her whole life being underestimated. The quiet widow, the modest engineer, the woman in the third row. People saw what they wanted to see, but they never saw the truth. And that had always been her greatest advantage. She closed her eyes again. This time she slept. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning. Plain white, standard legal size. Dylan's name on the front, Emily's address below it. She signed for it at the door. The courier didn't make eye contact. He just handed her the clipboard and left. Emily stood in her small entryway. She held the envelope in both hands. It was heavier than it looked. She knew what it was before she opened it. She had seen enough legal documents in her life. The weight, the formality, the cold precision of trouble wrapped in paper. She opened it carefully. She pulled out the pages. Legal separation petition. Filed by Jessica Marie Calloway. Against Dylan Robert Turner. Grounds concern over undisclosed family assets and potential financial fraud within the marriage. Emily read every word. Her hand stayed steady, but something inside her chest went very still. Jessica had moved first, and she had moved hard. Dylan came to the apartment that evening. He didn't call ahead. He just knocked. 3 sharp raps. Emily opened the door. He looked terrible. His eyes were red. His hair was uncombed. He wore the same shirt he had worn yesterday. She could see it in the wrinkles, in the way it hung on his shoulders. "Can I come in?" he asked. His voice was flat, empty. Emily stepped aside. He walked past her into the living room. He didn't sit. He stood by the window. He stared out at the street below. The light outside was fading. The city looked gray and cold. Emily closed the door. She stood near the kitchen. She waited. "Jessica filed for separation," Dylan said finally. His voice cracked on the word. "She says I lied to her. She says my family has hidden assets. She says she can't trust me." Emily felt the words like physical blows, but she kept her face calm. "Dylan," she said softly. He turned to face her. His eyes were bright with unshed tears, with anger, with something that looked like betrayal. "Did you do this?" he asked. "Did you blow up my marriage?" Emily opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no easy answer, no simple truth that would make this better. "It's complicated," she said. "No." Dylan's voice was sharp now, loud. "It's not complicated. It's simple. Did you or didn't you? Do you have money they didn't know about? Are you the investor Jessica was talking about?" Emily looked at her son, at the man she had raised alone, at the boy who had once believed she could fix anything. She nodded slowly. Yes, she said. The word hung in the air between them. Small and final. Dylan's face crumpled. He sat down hard on the couch. He put his head in his hands. How much, Hannah? He asked. His voice was muffled. Enough, Emily said. More than you know. Less than they think. But enough that it matters. Why didn't you tell me? Dylan looked up. His face was wet. Why did I have to find out like this? Why did Jessica have to find out from her father instead of from us? Emily sat down across from him. She folded her hands in her lap. She chose her words carefully. Because I was protecting you, she said. Because I wanted you to build your own life, your own career. Without anyone saying you got it because of money, because of connections. I wanted you to be proud of what you accomplished. And you should be. You earned everything you have. But it was a lie, Dylan said. My whole life. You let me think we were just getting by. That you were just a systems engineer with a small pension. That we were normal. We were normal, Emily said quietly. I worked. I saved. I invested carefully. That's what normal people do. I just did it better than most. And I did it for you. Dylan shook his head. He stood up. He walked to the door. I need time, he said. I need to think. He left without looking back. The door closed softly behind him. Emily sat alone in the quiet apartment. The light outside had gone completely dark. She didn't move to turn on a lamp. She just sat in the growing shadows. The next call came from James Sullivan. His voice was tense. The SEC moved from informal to formal, he said. They want documents, transaction records, ownership structures. They gave us 14 days. Emily closed her eyes. She had known this was coming, but knowing didn't make it easier. What does that mean, she asked. It means they're serious, James said. It means someone pushed them. Hard. With specifics. This isn't random. This is targeted. Emily thought about headlines. About camera crews outside her building. About walking into a federal building with her hands cuffed. About the humiliation. The exposure. The loss of dignity. She was 61 years old. She had spent her whole life being careful. Being private. Being invisible. The thought of being dragged into public view made her feel sick. Can we fight it? She asked. Yes, James said. But it won't be clean. And it won't be quick. You need to prepare for the worst. Emily thanked him and hung up. She sat very still. The apartment was cold. She hadn't noticed before. But now she felt it in her bones. Robert Calloway called the next morning. His tone was cordial. Almost friendly. That made it worse. Emily, he said, I think we should meet. Clear the air. Find a reasonable solution. Emily agreed. Because she needed to see his face. She needed to understand what he really wanted. They met at a coffee shop in Midtown. Neutral territory. Robert arrived with Paula. They sat across from Emily at a small table near the window. The morning light was bright and harsh. Paula wore a cashmere coat. She set her designer tote bag on the chair beside her. The leather gleamed. Expensive. Never knew. Emily wondered how long it would be before Paula had to sell bags like that. Before the money ran out completely? This doesn't have to be difficult, Robert said. He stirred sugar into his coffee. 3 packets. His hands were steady. We're family now. We should work together. What do you want? Emily asked. Robert smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Transparency, he said. Cooperation. A seat at the table. You've made decisions that affect all of us. It's only fair that we have a say. Fair, Emily repeated. The word tasted bitter. Paula leaned forward. She touched Emily's hand briefly. The gesture was calculated. Practiced. We just want respect, Paula said. Surely you understand that. We're not asking for anything unreasonable. Emily looked at Paula's hand. At the diamond ring that probably cost more than Emily's first car. At the manicured nails. The smooth skin that spoke of expensive creams and spa treatments. Respect, Emily said softly. Is that what you call threatening my son's marriage? Calling investigators? Pushing the SEC? Robert's smile faded. We didn't push anyone, he said. We simply asked questions. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to worry about. And if I refuse to cooperate? Emily asked. Robert was quiet for a moment. He took a sip of coffee. He set the cup down carefully. Then things might become public, he said. The press loves stories about hidden wealth, about secret investors, about mothers who manipulate their children's lives. It would be unfortunate, especially for Dylan. There it was, the threat, wrapped in politeness, but a threat nonetheless. Emily stood up. She picked up her bag. "Thank you for the coffee," she said. She walked out. She didn't look back. That afternoon, a lawyer named Mark Vance left a message on her phone. He represented Jessica. His voice was smooth, professional, cold. "Mrs. Turner," he said on the voicemail, "I'd like to discuss a resolution. My client is willing to mediate, but we need full disclosure. All assets, all holdings, all structures. We believe you've been operating as a power behind the curtain, manipulating family decisions, controlling outcomes. That needs to stop." Emily listened to the message 3 times. Each time the words stung more. Power behind the curtain, manipulating, controlling. She had worked. She had built something. She had protected her son. And now she was being painted as a villain, as someone who pulled strings, who played games, who couldn't be trusted. Dylan came back that night, but he didn't come inside. He stood in the hallway. His face was drawn, exhausted. "I need to know everything," he said. "Not pieces, not explanations, everything." Emily nodded. She told him. She explained the investments, the structures, the companies, the careful planning over decades. She didn't use numbers, but she gave him the scale, the scope, the reality of what she had built. Dylan listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "I don't know who you are," he said finally. "I thought I did. I thought you were my mom, the woman who raised me, who worked long hours, who made sacrifices. But you're also this other person, this strategist, this player, and I don't know which one is real." "Both," Emily said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "They're freedom. They're both real." Dylan looked at her. His eyes were full of something she couldn't name. Disappointment, confusion, grief. "I need space," he said. "I can't do this right now." He left. Again. Emily stood in the doorway and watched him go. She heard his footsteps on the stairs, heard the building door close, heard the street swallow him up. She went back inside. She closed the door. She locked it. She walked to her bedroom. She sat on the edge of the bed. And then finally she let herself break. The tears came hard, silent at first, then louder. She put her face in her hands. She sobbed. Her whole body shook with it. She had lost her son. She had lost his respect. She had lost everything she cared about. And for what? For money? For security? For a plan that was supposed to protect him but had only pushed him away? She cried until there was nothing left, until her throat was raw, until her eyes burned. Then she lay down. She curled up on top of the blanket. She stared at the wall. The apartment was dark, silent. She could hear her own breathing, could feel her heartbeat, could taste salt on her lips. She thought about giving up, about letting them win, about signing whatever they wanted, about walking away from everything. But then she thought about Dylan, about the boy who had trusted her, about the man who deserved better than a mother who quit. She sat up slowly. She wiped her face with her sleeve. She stood up. She walked to her desk. She turned on the lamp. She opened her laptop. She started typing. A message. To Robert. To Jessica. To their lawyers. 72 hours. Withdraw the complaints. Withdraw the SEC referrals. Withdraw the separation petition. Or Emily would release everything. Every file. Every transaction. Every piece of documentation that showed the Calloway family's debts. Their desperation. Their attempts to extort her. She would go to war. And she would win. She hit send. Then she opened a new document. She worked through the night. She built a structure. A counter-proposal. Something clear. Measurable. Survivable. If they wanted a seat at the table, they would get one. But on her terms. With her rules. With consequences if they broke them. She typed until her fingers ached. Until the sky outside began to lighten. Until the first bird started singing. When she finished, she saved the document. She closed the laptop. She stood and walked to the window. The city was waking up. Lights were coming on. People were starting their days. Life continued. Emily looked at her reflection in the glass. Her eyes were swollen. Her face was pale. Her hair was a mess. But something had changed. Something in her expression. Something in the set of her jaw. She had been broken. She had been humiliated. She had been brought to her knees. But she was still standing. And she wasn't done yet. Emily sat at her desk in the darkness. The city lights glowed beyond her window. She closed her eyes. The past came rushing back. Chicago, 2009, a small apartment with secondhand furniture. Dylan was 9 years old. Hal worked late most nights. He came home with papers covered in diagrams, circuit designs, power management systems. He spread them across their kitchen table after Dylan went to bed. Emily made tea. She sat beside him. She asked questions. She understood the basics. She had studied engineering too. Different field, but the logic was the same. Hal explained his design. It reduced energy waste in industrial cooling systems. Simple concept, brilliant execution. He had filed the patent 3 years earlier. Now companies were calling, asking questions, making offers. They talked about selling, about what it might mean, about the money. We could move, Hal said. Get a bigger place. New car. Take Dylan somewhere nice. Emily shook her head. She touched his hand. We stay modest, she said. We invest smart. We build something that lasts. Hal looked at her. Then he nodded. He trusted her judgment. He always had. In 2012, they sold the patent. The number was larger than Emily had expected. Not millions, but enough. Enough to change everything if they were careful. They didn't change their apartment. They didn't buy a new car. They kept their old routines. Dylan never knew. He went to the same school, wore the same clothes, ate the same meals. Emily opened investment accounts. She started with index funds, core holdings, steady growth. Then she added tilts, technology, healthcare, renewable energy before it was fashionable. She bought real estate, workforce apartments in Phoenix, then Austin, small complexes, decent units, places where working people could afford rent. She bought before the boom, when prices were reasonable, when no one was paying attention. She had a rule. Simple, clear. Never invest where you seek approval. Invest where numbers compound. She avoided hot tips, avoided meme stocks, avoided anything that felt like gambling. She built slowly, methodically. Year after year, Hal kept working. He liked his job. He liked solving problems. The money sat in accounts, growing quietly, invisibly. Dylan went to college. He got scholarships. He worked part-time jobs. He never asked for handouts. Emily never offered. She wanted him to build his own life, to earn his own confidence. Then 2020 came. The hospital room was white and sterile. The machines beeped softly. Hal lay in the bed, tubes in his arms. His breathing was shallow. The doctors said heart failure. Sudden, unexpected. Nothing they could do. Emily sat beside him. She held his hand. Dylan stood at the foot of the bed, silent, shocked. Hal looked at Emily. His eyes were tired, but they were clear. Take care of him, he whispered. Emily nodded. She couldn't speak. Her throat was too tight. Hal closed his eyes. The beeping slowed, then stopped. Emily sat very still. The room was silent except for Dylan's quiet crying. After the funeral, Emily went back to work. Not her job, her other work. The investments, the portfolios, the structures. She automated rebalancing. She tightened the governance. She added layers of protection, shell companies, trusts, legal frameworks that kept everything separate, clean, private. She looked for opportunities, places where money could do more than just grow, places where it could fix things. Callaway Freight appeared on her radar in 2021, a family company drowning in debt. Mismanaged for years, Robert Callaway was spending money they didn't have, expanding into markets that made no sense. The company was bleeding cash, but the core business was sound. The terminals were valuable. The contracts were good. The employees were skilled. Emily saw potential. She made an offer through intermediaries. Silent investor. No name. No press. Just capital and conditions. She fixed the debt. She cut the vanity projects. She preserved jobs. She installed managers who knew what they were doing. People who focused on operations instead of appearances. The company stabilized, then grew. Slowly. Steadily. Emily built other holdings. Renewable energy contracts. Medical technology licensing. Robotics manufacturing in the Midwest. She built a lattice. Interconnected. Resilient. Invisible. People asked why she stayed in her small apartment, why she lived so simply, why she didn't enjoy her success. She never answered, because the answer was Dylan. Everything was for Dylan. She wanted him to build his own career, to earn his own respect, to stand on his own merit. She didn't want golden handcuffs, didn't want him spoiled, didn't want anyone to say he succeeded because of family money. Invisibility was strategy, not shame. It was her shield in a loud, prying world. She learned from Hal, from his quiet brilliance, from his refusal to seek attention. From his focus on the work itself, she carried that forward. After he was gone, she built something that would protect Dylan long after she was gone too. Emily opened her eyes. The apartment was still dark. The city still glowed. The past faded back into memory. But the lesson remained. Clear, sharp, undeniable. Invisibility was power. Silence was strength. And patience always outlasted noise. The Callaways thought they knew her. They thought she was simple, modest, wacky. They were wrong. She had built an empire from nothing. She had survived loss. She had protected her son through careful planning and quiet determination. And now they wanted to take that from her, to expose her, to control her. But they didn't understand. They had never understood. Emily stood. She walked to the window. She looked out at the city, at the millions of lights, at the endless motion. Somewhere out there, the Callaways were sleeping. They thought they had won. They thought 72 hours would break her, that she would fold, that she would give them what they wanted. They didn't know what she had learned, what Hal had taught her, what decades of quiet building had created. She wasn't just a widow with a portfolio. She was a strategist with resources, with patience, with nothing left to lose. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. And Emily Turner played to win. The boardroom was on the 42nd floor of a midtown office building. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over Manhattan. The morning light was bright and cold. The conference table was long and polished, dark wood, heavy, the kind that cost more than most cars. Emily sat on one side, James Sullivan to her left, Dylan to her right. Dylan's face was pale. His hands were folded on the table. He hadn't spoken since they arrived. Across from them sat Jessica, her lawyer Mark Vance beside her, Robert Calloway at the end, Paula next to him. They looked confident, prepared. Paula's handbag sat on the table. Expensive leather. Probably new. The air smelled of coffee and something floral. Paula's perfume. Too strong for the enclosed space. Vance opened his briefcase. He pulled out documents. He arranged them neatly in front of him. His movements were precise, practiced. He was a man who liked control. "Thank you for coming," Vance said. He looked at Emily. His smile was professional. Cold. "I think we can resolve this quickly. My clients are reasonable people. They simply want transparency and fairness." Emily said nothing. She folded her hands on the table. She waited. Vance slid a document across the table. James picked it up. He scanned it quickly. His expression didn't change. "A family trust," Vance said, "funded by Mrs. Turner's assets, governed by a board with equal votes. Each family member gets representation. Decisions are made collectively. It's clean. It's fair. It protects everyone." He paused. He looked at Emily. He was waiting for a response. For objection. For weakness. Emily reached into her own folder. She pulled out a stack of papers. She set them on the table. One by one. Slowly. Deliberately. The first document was an invoice. From a private investigation firm in Boston. Addressed to Robert Calloway. Dated 3 weeks ago. The line items listed background checks, financial searches, corporate structure analysis. The second document was a credit report. Jessica's name at the top. 3 new credit lines. All opened within 60 days. All with high limits. All unused. The third was a debt summary. The Calloway Mansion. Home equity line of credit. Balance at 78% of property value. Interest-only payments ending in 6 months. The fourth was a transaction log. Consulting payments from Calloway Freight subsidiaries to Robert Calloway. $200,000 over the past year for services never specified. Never documented. Emily arranged the papers carefully. She didn't look at Vance. She looked at Robert. "You didn't seek stewardship," Emily said quietly. "You sought access." Robert's face went rigid. Paula's hand moved to her handbag. Her fingers gripped the leather. Jessica looked at the documents, then at her father. Her expression shifted. Something between surprise and calculation. Vance leaned forward. He glanced at the papers. His jaw tightened. "Where did you get these?" he asked. "B or nakinturnimasin." "Public records," Emily said. "Legally obtained. Thoroughly documented." She pulled out another document. This one was clean. Typed. Professional. "A term sheet?" "I have an offer," Emily said. "One time only. Non-negotiable." She slid the paper across the table. James had prepared it. They had worked on it together through the night. Every word chosen carefully. Every clause tested for loopholes. $5 million, Emily said. To Jessica. Paid within 30 days of signed agreement? Jessica's eyes widened slightly. She looked at the number, then at Emily. In addition, Emily continued, I will arrange refinancing for the Callaway house. The current HELOC will be paid off. A new mortgage will be established. Fixed rate, sure, fixed rate. 30-year term. Reasonable payment. Paula's breath caught. Robert didn't move. Conditions, Emily said. Her voice stayed level. Calm. All complaints are withdrawn within 72 hours. Legal separation petition. CC referrals. Private investigations. Everything. She paused. She let the words settle. Non-contact clause. No communication between the Callaway family and Dylan unless both parties agree in writing. Dylan's head turned slightly. He looked at Emily. She didn't look back. Mutual non-disparagement. No public statements. No media contact. No social media posts about this matter or any party involved. Vance was writing notes. Fast. His pen moved across the paper. And finally, Emily said, no claims on Dylan's income or assets. Now or in the future. He is released from any obligation, financial or otherwise, to the Callaway family. The room was silent. Outside, the city hummed. Cars honked far below. But inside, there was only breathing. Only the sound of Vance's pen scratching paper. If you refuse, Emily said, the consulting contracts end immediately. No refinancing assistance. Full legal response to all claims. No private settlement. Ever. She folded her hands again. She looked at each of them in turn. Jessica, Robert, Paula, Vance, you will spend the next 3 years in litigation. You will spend hundreds of thousands on legal fees. You will lose. And at the end, you will walk away with nothing but debt and humiliation. Robert's face had gone pale. His hands were flat on the table. His fingers spread wide, like he was trying to hold on to something. Jessica looked at the term sheet, then at her lawyer. Vance was still writing. Calculating. His mind was working through the numbers, through the risks. Paula opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked at her husband. Robert didn't look back. Then Dylan spoke. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. Did you ever love me for me? The question hung in the air. He wasn't looking at Emily. He was looking at Jessica. Jessica's face went blank. She opened her mouth. No words came. She looked down at the table, at the papers, at the numbers. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10. 20. No one spoke. No one moved. Dylan nodded slowly, like he had received his answer, like the silence had told him everything he needed to know. He stood up. He pushed his chair back. The sound was loud in the quiet room. I'm done, he said. He looked at Emily. Whatever you decide, I'm done with this. He walked out. The door closed softly behind him. Emily watched him go. Something in her chest tightened, but she didn't let it show on her face. She turned back to the table. Vance set down his pen. He looked at the term sheet, then at Jessica, then at Robert. Can we have time to discuss? He asked. Noon tomorrow, Emily said. The offer expires at noon tomorrow. After that, it's off the table. Vance nodded. He gathered his papers. He stood. Jessica stood. Robert and Paula followed. They walked out without speaking. The door closed again. Emily sat alone with James. The room felt larger now, emptier. The morning light had shifted. It fell across the table in sharp angles. You did well, James said quietly. Emily didn't respond. She stared at the door Dylan had walked through. She thought about his question, about Jessica's silence, about the answer that wasn't spoken but was heard by everyone in the room. She stood. She picked up her folder. She walked to the window. The city stretched out below, 42 floors down. People moving like ants, cars like toys, life continuing in 1,000 different directions. She had won. She knew that. The numbers made sense. The pressure was real. They would take the offer. They had no choice. But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like breaking something. Something that might have been good once. Something that could have mattered. She closed her eyes. She breathed slowly. Then she opened them again. James stood beside her. He didn't say anything. He just stood there. A quiet presence. It's done, Emily said finally. James nodded. It's done. They left the boardroom together. The door locked behind them. The conference table sat empty. The papers remained where they had been laid. Evidence of a war that had ended before the battle was fully fought. Outside, the elevator descended. 42 floors. Down and down. Back to street level. Back to the world. Emily stepped out onto the sidewalk. The air was cold. The sun was bright. People hurried past. No one looked at her. No one knew what had just happened. She pulled her coat tighter. She started walking. She didn't know where. Just away. Just somewhere else. Behind her, in that boardroom high above the city, the Callaways would gather again. They would read the terms. They would do the math. They would see the reality. And they would take the deal. Because they had no other choice. Emily knew this. She had built it that way. Carefully. Precisely. With no escape route. No alternative. But knowing didn't make it easier. Winning didn't make it hurt less. She walked on. The city swallowed her. And somewhere above, in a glass tower, a family counted their losses and prepared to surrender. The clock on the conference room wall read 11:47. Emily sat at the same table. The same room? 42 floors above Manhattan. James beside her. The morning light had shifted. Now it came from the west. Softer. Warmer. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mark Vance. 3 words. We accept terms. Emily showed the screen to James. He nodded once. No smile. No celebration. Just acknowledgement. By 5 o'clock that evening, the papers were signed. Electronic signatures. Clean. Final. The ACH transfer was scheduled. $5 million. 30 days. Emily closed her laptop. She stood. She looked out the window one last time. The city was turning gold in the late afternoon sun. It's over, James said. Emily nodded. But she knew it wasn't really over. Not completely. There would be paperwork, phone calls, details to manage. But the war was finished. The battlefield was quiet. She left the building. She walked home through the city. The air was cool. Evening was coming. People rushed past her. Going home. Going to dinner. Going to lives that had nothing to do with boardrooms or settlements or broken families. Emily walked slowly. She let the city move around her. She felt something loosening in her chest. Something that had been tight for months. 3 weeks later, Dylan filed for divorce. Irreconcilable differences. The petition was quiet. No drama. No press. It went on a fast track. Uncontested. Jessica didn't fight. She had her settlement. She had her money. That was what she wanted. Dylan came to Emily's apartment the day after he filed. He knocked. She opened the door. They looked at each other for a long moment. Can I come in, Yusung? He asked. Emily stepped aside. He walked past her. He sat on the couch. She sat across from him. I'm sorry, he said. His voice was quiet. For how I acted. For the things I said. Emily shook her head. You had every right to be angry. Maybe or in some, Dylan said. But I should have trusted you. I should have known you had reasons. Emily felt tears starting, but she blinked them back. She had cried enough. I should have told you sooner, she said. I was trying to protect you, but I think I was also protecting myself. From having to explain. From having to defend choices I made. Dylan nodded slowly. He looked at his hands. Can we start over, he asked. Not forget, but start fresh. With truth between us. Emily felt something break inside her. Something old and heavy. She nodded. Yes, she said. We can start fresh. 6 months later, Emily left New York. She sold almost nothing from the apartment. She packed 2 suitcases. She gave away furniture. She kept photographs, letters, a few books. She moved to Santa Fe. A small adobe rental on the east side. 1 bedroom. A courtyard with red clay tiles. Mountains visible from the kitchen window. The air was dry and clean. The sky was enormous. She woke at 8 each morning. She wrapped herself in a blue shawl. She walked to a small chapel 3 blocks away. She sat in the back pew. She didn't pray exactly. She just sat, in the quiet, in the cool morning light that came through stained glass windows. The smell of candle wax and old wood reminded her of something. Maybe her childhood. Maybe just peace. After the chapel, she walked. Through the plaza. Past galleries. Past cafes. She bought coffee. She sat on benches. She watched people. No one knew her. No one recognized her. She was just another woman in her 60s, living quietly, causing no trouble. It felt like freedom. In August, she established the Hal and Emily Turner Fund, a foundation for first-generation engineering students. Focus areas Chicago and Austin, the places where she and Hal had built their lives. She didn't want plaques, didn't want buildings named after them. She wanted metrics, results, real impact. The fund gave grants. It supported capstone projects. It built community makerspaces where students could learn and experiment. It paid for materials, for tools, for mentorship. Emily hired a small staff, 3 people. They ran the operations. She stayed in the background, She reviewed reports. She approved budgets. But she didn't seek attention. The first grants went out in September. 20 students, 20 projects. Emily read every application herself. She chose them carefully, looking for passion, for potential, for students who reminded her of herself, of people who wanted to build things that mattered. Dylan visited at Thanksgiving. He flew to Albuquerque. He rented a car. He drove to Santa Fe. Emily cooked. Simple food. Turkey, potatoes, green beans, nothing fancy. They ate at her small table. The courtyard door was open. Cool evening air drifted in, the smell of pinon wood from someone's fireplace. I met someone, Dylan said. Emily looked up. His face was soft, open. Something had changed in him. The tension was gone, the tightness around his eyes. Tell me, she said. Her name is Sarah. She teaches third grade. Public school in Brooklyn. She's never heard of Wharton. She doesn't care about balance sheets. We met at a coffee shop. She spilled her latte on my laptop. Emily smiled. It was the first real smile she'd felt in months. She sounds perfect, Emily said. She is, Dylan said. He paused. He looked at Emily. I told her about you, about everything. She said something that stuck with me. What did she say? She said your mom sounds like someone who kept her priorities straight. Emily felt her throat tighten. She set down her fork. She looked at her son, at the man he had become. Good, kind, clear about what mattered. I'd like to meet her, Emily said. Christmas? Dylan asked. She wants to come, if that's okay. More than okay, Emily said. Christmas came. Sarah arrived with Dylan. She was short. Dark hair, bright eyes. She wore jeans and a sweater. No jewelry except small earrings. She hugged Emily at the door. Mrs. Turner, she said. Thank you for having me. Emily said. Just Emily. They cooked together, the three of them. Sarah told stories about her students, about the challenges of public education, about kids who came to school hungry, about the joy of watching a child finally understand something they'd been struggling with. Emily listened. She watched Dylan watch Sarah. She saw the way he smiled, the way he relaxed around her, the way they moved together in the small kitchen like they'd been doing it for years. After dinner, they sat in the courtyard, blankets over their knees. The sky was clear, stars everywhere, more stars than Emily had ever seen in New York. This is beautiful, Sarah said. I can see why you moved here. Emily looked up at the sky, at the endless dark punctuated by light. I needed space, Emily said. Physical space, mental space, room to breathe. And did you find it? Sarah asked. Emily nodded. I did. In January, Emily received a message from James. Robert Calloway had applied for a consulting contract. Not with Calloway Freight, with one of Emily's renewable energy subsidiaries. A real position, real work. Advising on logistics for solar panel distribution. He's qualified, James wrote. The application went through normal channels. No backdoor contact, no strings, just a resume and references. Emily read the message 3 times. Then she called James. Hire him, she said, but make it clear. He's evaluated like everyone else. Performance reviews, metrics. If he doesn't deliver, he's out. Understood, James said. Emily hung up. She sat at her desk. She looked out at the mountains. She thought about Robert, about pride, about what it takes to admit you were wrong, to start over, to earn your place instead of demanding it. Maybe he had learned something. Maybe not. Time would tell. Spring came to Santa Fe. The air warmed. Wildflowers appeared in the hills. Emily planted herbs in clay pots in her courtyard. Basil, rosemary, mint. She woke early. She made coffee. She sat in the courtyard with a book. The morning light was clear and golden. Birds sang in the neighbor's tree. The smell of sage and earth filled the air. Her phone rang. Dylan, Mom, he said. I have news. Good news? Emily asked. Sarah and I are engaged. Emily closed her eyes. She smiled. She felt warmth spread through her chest. That's wonderful, she said. Her voice broke slightly. I'm so happy for you. We want to keep it small, Dylan said. Just family. Just people we love. Will you come? Will you be there? Of course, Emily said. I wouldn't miss it. The wedding was in June. A small park in Brooklyn. No string quartet. No champagne towers. Just folding chairs in a simple arch covered in wildflowers. Sarah wore a white sundress. Dylan wore a blue suit. No tuxedo. Just clean and simple. Emily sat in the front row. She wore a soft gray dress. Pearl earrings. The same ones from Dylan's first wedding. But this time felt different. This time felt real. Sarah's family filled the other side. Teachers, nurses, construction workers, people with calloused hands and kind faces, people who worked hard and loved deeply. The ceremony was short. The vows were simple. Dylan's voice was steady. Sarah's eyes were bright. When the officiant said, "You may kiss," everyone cheered. Small and loud. Genuine joy. At the reception, Sarah's father gave a toast. He thanked everyone for coming. He said something about love being built on truth, on respect, on choosing each other every day. Emily listened. She thought about the life they had built, about the choices they had made, about invisibility and strategy and all the ways she had tried to protect her son. In the end, protection wasn't enough. Truth was what mattered. Truth and love and the courage to start over when things fell apart. Emily flew back to Santa Fe the next morning. She settled into her seat on the plane. She looked out the window as New York disappeared beneath clouds. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dylan. "Thank you for everything. I love you, Mom." Emily typed back. "I love you too. Be happy." She put the phone away. She closed her eyes. She breathed slowly. The war was over. The battlefield was empty. And what remained was simple. A mother and son who had found their way back to each other. A foundation that would help young engineers build futures. A small adobe house in New Mexico where the sky was wide and the air was clear. Privacy had been kept. Not perfectly, but enough. Invisibility was now optional. A choice rather than a necessity. And purpose had been chosen deliberately, carefully, with intention. Emily opened her eyes. The plane climbed higher. Above the clouds, into blue sky. She looked out at the endless horizon. She had walked through fire. She had lost things. She had won things. She had broken and healed and started over. And now finally she could breathe again. The plane flew west, toward mountains, toward home, toward whatever came next. Emily Turner sat in her window seat and watched the world pass below. She was 62 years old. She had made mistakes. She had made amends. She had built something that would last beyond her. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The sun climbed higher. The sky stretched endless and bright. And somewhere below, life continued. People worked, loved, struggled, survived. Emily closed her eyes and let herself rest. The war was over. The future was unwritten. And for the first time in years, that felt exactly right. The food co-op opened at 9 every Tuesday morning. Emily arrived early. She wore jeans and a simple cotton shirt. Her hair was pulled back. No jewelry except her wedding ring. Hal's ring. She still wore it. After all these years, the co-op smelled like fresh bread and coffee. Wooden shelves held bulk grains and dried beans. Vegetables sat in crates near the entrance. Local farmers brought them in twice a week. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead. Emily worked the help desk. She answered questions. She helped neighbors fill out forms. Housing assistance, insulin copay programs, utility payment plans. The paperwork was complicated. The system was designed to confuse. But Emily understood systems. She knew how to navigate them. A woman named Rosa came in. She was 73, diabetic. Her Medicare Part D had a coverage gap. The donut hole. Her insulin costs had jumped from $30 a month to $300. "I can't afford this," Rosa said. Her hands shook as she held the pharmacy receipt. "I don't know what to do." Emily pulled out a form. She explained the manufacturer assistance program. She helped Rosa fill it out. She made copies. She addressed the envelope. "Mail this today," Emily said. "You should hear back in 2 weeks. In the meantime, call this number." She wrote down a pharmacy benefit manager hotline. "Tell them you're in the coverage gap. Ask about bridge programs." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. She gripped Emily's hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "I thought I was alone." "You're not alone," Emily said. "None of us are." On Thursday afternoons, Emily taught at the community college. Not officially. She wasn't faculty, but she funded a microgrant program. Seniors learning computer-aided design, CNC machine operation, skills that could lead to part-time work, to side businesses, to purpose. The classroom smelled like sawdust and machine oil. The CNC router whirred in the corner. Students ranged from 60 to 80 years old. Retired machinists, former teachers, people who wanted to build things with their hands. Emily walked between workstations. She answered questions. She adjusted settings. She showed them how to convert a drawing into machine code. A man named Tom was making a jewelry box for his wife. Their 50th anniversary was coming. He had drawn the design by hand. Now he was learning to digitize it. This is harder than I thought, Tom said. He squinted at the computer screen. My eyes aren't what they used to be. Emily leaned over his shoulder. She increased the font size. She adjusted the contrast. She showed him the zoom function. Take your time, Chieko, she said. The machine doesn't care how long you take. It just cares that the code is right. Tom nodded. He worked slowly, carefully. His hands were spotted with age, but they were steady. Emily watched him work. She thought about how, about his careful hands, about the way he drew circuit diagrams at their kitchen table, about patience and precision and the quiet satisfaction of making something real. In October, Emily received an email. The subject line read, "Thank you." She opened it. The sender was Marcus Chen, one of the first Turner Fund scholarship recipients. He had received a grant 2 years ago, $10,000, for his senior capstone project at a small college in Chicago. The email was short, direct, a three to Mrs. Turner. I'm graduating in December. Mechanical engineering. I already have a job offer. Renewable energy company in Pittsburgh. I'm the first person in my family to finish college. My parents came here with nothing. They worked in restaurants. They saved everything, but it wasn't enough for tuition. Your grant made the difference. I'm writing to say thank you and to tell you that I won't forget. Emily read the email 3 times. Then she closed her laptop. She walked to the window. She looked out at the mountains. The afternoon light was golden. The air smelled like rain coming. She felt something break open inside her chest. Not sadness, not quite joy. Something else. Something that felt like completion. This was why. This was the reason for everything. Not the money, not the strategy, not the victory over the Callaways. This, a young man in Pittsburgh, starting a career, building a life. Because someone believed in him. Emily pressed her palm against the window glass. It was cool and smooth. She could feel her heartbeat in her fingertips. You're welcome, Marcus, she whispered. You're so welcome. That evening, Dylan called. Emily answered on the second ring. Hey, Mom, hun, he said. Hey, she said. Sarah says hi. She's making dinner. She wants to know if you have a good recipe for green chili stew. Emily smiled. Tell her I'll text it to her. And tell her to use pork shoulder, not chicken. It makes a difference. Will do. Dylan paused. She heard him moving. The door closing. Background noise fading. Mom, I called to tell you something. Emily's chest tightened. What is it? Sarah's pregnant. Emily sat down. Her legs went weak. Her hand pressed against her mouth. Mom, you there? I'm here, she said. Her voice was shaking. Dylan, that's wonderful. That's so wonderful. She heard him laughing. Soft and happy. We're terrified, him and the 101. Yuan, but we're excited. And we wanted you to be the first to know. When? Emily asked. April. Spring baby. Emily closed her eyes. She thought about a baby, a grandchild, a new generation. She thought about holding a small warm body, about teaching, about stories, about all the things grandmothers do. I'm so happy for you, she said. For both of you. Will you come? When the baby's born? Try to keep me away, Emily said. They talked for 20 more minutes. Not about money, not about business, not about strategy, just about life, about Sarah's cravings, about nursery colors, about names they were considering. When they hung up, Emily sat in the quiet apartment. The light had faded completely. The room was dark, but she didn't turn on a lamp. She just sat, holding her phone, feeling the warmth of her son's voice still echoing in her ear. Sometimes Emily thought about Jessica. Not often, but sometimes she wondered where Jessica was, what she was doing, whether she had found what she was looking for. Emily felt no hate, no bitterness, just distance. Just the quiet knowledge that some people come into your life for a season. And when that season ends, you let them go. Jessica had gotten her settlement. She had her money. She would reinvent herself somewhere. Boston, probably. Or maybe New York. Somewhere fast and shiny where wealth mattered more than character. Emily hoped she would be happy. She doubted it. But she hoped. Because the real victory wasn't in defeating Jessica. It was in building something that lasted, something that mattered. Something that didn't need an audience to have value. One evening in November, Emily attended a community meeting. The topic was healthcare costs, Medicare gaps, prescription coverage, issues that affected everyone in the room. People spoke about their struggles, about choosing between medicine and groceries, about skipping doses to make bottles last longer, about the terror of unexpected medical bills. Emily listened. She didn't speak. She just listened. An older man named Frank talked about his wife, about her cancer diagnosis, about the treatments that insurance wouldn't cover, about the second mortgage on their house, about the debt that would outlive them both. "We worked our whole lives," Frank said. His voice broke. "We did everything right, and now we're losing everything." Because she got sick. The room was silent, heavy with shared pain. Emily thought about her own wealth, about the systems she had learned to navigate, about the privilege of never having to choose between medicine and food. She couldn't fix the system. She couldn't solve healthcare in America, but she could help individuals. One person at a time, one grant at a time, one form at a time. After the meeting, she approached Frank. She gave him her number. She told him about programs he might qualify for. She offered to help with the paperwork. He looked at her with tired eyes. "Why would you help me?" he asked. "You don't even know me." "Because I can," Emily said simply. "And because no one should face this alone." December brought snow to the mountains, soft white covering the red earth. Emily woke early. She made coffee. She sat in her courtyard wrapped in blankets. The cold air bit at her cheeks, but the sky was clear and endless. She thought about the past 2 years, about Brooklyn Bridge Park, about boardrooms and settlements and wars fought with documents instead of weapons. She thought about what she had lost: privacy, invisibility, the safety of being unknown. But she also thought about what she had gained: truth with Dylan, purpose with the foundation, community in Santa Fe, peace in her own heart. Wealth didn't equal worth. She had learned that. Or maybe she had always known it. But now she lived it. Every day. Peace beat prestige. Quiet power beat loud victory. Thriving in their absence beat any revenge she could have planned. The most elegant revenge was building a life so full that there was no room left for bitterness. Emily sipped her coffee. The steam rose in white curls. The sun climbed over the mountains. Golden light spread across the snow. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dylan. A photo. Sarah's ultrasound. A tiny blob that would become her grandchild. Emily smiled. She saved the photo. She looked at it for a long time. This was the life she had built. Not perfect. Not glamorous. But real. Honest. Full of meaning. If the Callaways called her an embarrassment again, she would answer with this. With Marcus in Pittsburgh. With Rosa's insulin covered. With Tom's jewelry box finished and wrapped. With Dylan's baby on the way. With mornings in the courtyard and evenings teaching seniors and nights sleeping without regret. She would answer with the quiet power of a life well lived. The sun rose higher. The snow glittered. And Emily Turner sat in her small courtyard and watched the world wake up. She was 62 years old. She had made mistakes. She had built things. She had lost and won and started over. And now, finally, she was exactly where she needed to be. The day stretched ahead, full of small tasks, small kindnesses, small moments that added up to something larger than any strategy, larger than any plan. Emily finished her coffee. She stood. She went inside. She had work to do, forms to fill out, emails to answer, lives to touch in quiet ways. The war was over. The real work had just begun. And Emily Turner